because yes, it's a little bit different. John goes into a little bit more detail than Matthew does. But I want us to look at this account for the second thing about this ultimate rock and roll experience. The first is like the Rolling Stone. The second thing about this ultimate rock and roll experience is this: the king has left the building. The king has left the building. And I'm not talking about old Elvis Presley. He's dead and gone, whether all those fans don't believe it. But Jesus Christ, the King of Kings, had left the building. I want you to look at these two reasons why he left the building. First one is in John 20, verse 5 through 7. It says this again: "And he stooping down and looked in, saw the linen clothes lying, yet went he not in. Then cometh Simon Peter following him, and went into the sepulchre, and seeth the linen clothes lie, and the napkin that was about his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but wrapped together in a place by itself." This first thing I want you to see about the king has left the building. First thing, the king has left the building, but he will be back. First thing I see here is the king has left the building, but he will be back. Why do I say that? It's a very important thing, and I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but if you've ever heard it before. But Jesus Christ, he had manners. He was a boy of manners. And I don't know about any of you, but in my high school, we had to take etiquette classes. Anybody ever do that? Etiquette classes, they teach you how to dine, they teach you to seat your lady, they teach you how to fold your napkin and all that. And what do you do with the napkin is very important. What does it say here in verse 7? It says, "And the napkin that was about his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but wrapped together in a place by itself." If anybody knows proper etiquette, and it was the same then as it is now, what do you do when you leave the table if you are coming back? If you're not coming back and if you're done, you have the napkin in your lap. You take that napkin and you throw it on the table. Messy, you're done. But what do you do if you are coming back, so you need to go use the restroom, or if you will be back because you're not finished with your plate? And in fancy restaurants, of course, waiters know this. You fold it neatly and you place it on the table. Jesus Christ took that napkin from his face, and he did not just throw it aside and say, "I'm done." What did he do? He folded the napkin by himself and he placed it there as if to say, "I will be back." So I want you to look at this first thing. The king has left the building, but he will be back. He will be back. And we know that he was resurrected that day. And he was seen of the disciples for many days. But to us as Christians, know this, that the king has left the building, and the king has left this world. But one day, he will be back for me and you. That napkin is still folded, so to speak, in our lives as Christians. The king has left the building. First, but he will be back. The second thing I want you to see is in verse 16 and 17, about the king has left the building. It says this: "Jesus saith unto her, Mary. She turned herself and said unto him, Rabboni," which is to say, Master. Jesus saith unto her, "Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father. But go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascended to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God." I want you to look at the second thing about how the king has left the building. First, the king has left the building, but he will be back. Secondly, he left the building to ascend to the Father. He had not yet ascended to the Father, he says there. When we talked about this with the Lord Jesus Christ, after he was crucified, where did he go? He went to paradise to release the captives. He went to hell to show himself to the demons. And when he was resurrected that third day, he had not yet ascended to the Father. But what was he going to do when he ascended to the Father? Leviticus 16 talks about this. How in the temple, of course, the priests were supposed to wash themselves before they presented the sacrifice in the temple, in the Holy of Holies. They had to wash themselves, they had to cleanse themselves, and they had to present the sacrifice before the Lord. Jesus Christ there, he had to ascend to the Father, and he had to present himself as a supreme sacrifice and as the high priest. And not only that, and this is kind of a strange, funny thing, like I said, the priests, before they went into the Holy of Holies, they had to cleanse themselves. They had to wash their hands, cleanse themselves, make sure they were clean to go into God's presence. Well, I thought about this, it's kind of funny, but Jesus had been dead a couple of days, and as they said about old Lazarus, he stinked. Jesus had been dead a couple of days, he probably didn't stink, but he had to clean himself, go to heaven to be glorified, take him a holy shower before he came back down here anyway. So he had to be glorified and had to present himself as that supreme sacrifice to the Lord. So I want you to notice this. The king has left the building. First, but he will be back. And secondly, he left the building to ascend to the Father. And I put this down just as a funny note there. They say, well, 30,000 Elvis fans can't be wrong. I put down this about Jesus Christ being still alive. There's over 159 million Christians in the USA alone. I say that's enough fans of Jesus Christ not to be wrong. That's how many people believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead in America alone. So I say this, the king has left the building, but he will be back. The third thing I want you to notice, and lastly about the ultimate rock and roll experience. First, like a rolling stone, he conquered the obstacle of the grave and he rolled away our sins. Secondly, the king has left the building, but he will be back and he's had to ascend to the Father. And thirdly, I want you to notice this, verses 11 through 18. It says, "But Mary stood without at the sepulchre, weeping, and as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they said unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She saith unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him. And when Jesus had said thus, she turned herself back and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was Jesus. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if thou have borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. Jesus saith unto her, Mary. And she turned herself, and said unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. Jesus saith unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father. But go to my brethren, and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples what she had seen of the Lord, and that he had spoken these things unto her. This is the third thing about this ultimate rock and roll experience I want you to see. I want you to see the backstage pass. The backstage pass that Mary had, and as me and you have as well, to the Lord Jesus Christ. This is definitely the ultimate rock and roll experience, how that rock was rolled away. We have a backstage pass. First thing I want you to see is we get to see behind the scenes. I want you to notice this is because what we were talking about in Sunday school, even David. These people heard words come out of Jesus Christ's mouth himself. But we have every single account of the resurrection right here in front of us. We can see behind the scenes right here. We know everything that went on that some of those people did not get to experience. We are so much more fortunate than they were in that day. But the thing I want you to see about this backstage pass here is the picture that's before us about who Jesus Christ was. In verse 11 and 12, it says this, But Mary stood without at the sepulchre, weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth two angels in white, sitting, the one at the head, and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. I want you to see this picture here, because it's very clear to me. In the Old Testament, what did God have the Jews to build, to place in the Holy of Holies? Anybody know what name it was? Anybody? The Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, which was a picture of the presence of God. They put it in the Holy of Holies. They carried it everywhere they went. The Ten Commandments were in it. Moses' staff was in it, amongst other things, the manna and things like that. It was to represent the presence of God. I want to read you Hebrews 9, 3 through 5, and 11 through 12. It says, And after the second veil, the tabernacle which is called the holiest of all, which had the golden censer and the Ark of the Covenant, overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant. And over it, the cherubims of glory shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly, but Christ being come, a high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood. He entered in once into the holy place, having